but you can't step hard on this. My name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic, and I've had a good time. I enjoyed lunch with getting to visit with everybody while Steve ran out. I guess Steve's running for office because he's been at every table. I didn't get a chance to talk to him at all, but Bob and I talked about him. I've had a good time, and once again, I just absolutely can hear Harold when he talks, and I really, really appreciate what you're doing. I kind of hated that they're taping this. I was going to steal most of that, but as it is, I'll just take it back to the guys. And I was thinking, I was talking to Joe and the guys at lunch, and we were talking about their group down there and getting re-energized in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was telling them, when it comes to the ninth step, I'm not a guy who can sit up here in all honesty and tell you that I have diligently discharged all that I could on the ninth step. I wish that I could say that, but I will tell you that that's not true. And I will also tell you that that there's been some things that I have excused in myself because it was convenient to this day, and I am not better for that. And I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking, I want to take a look at that and see if if I don't want to wind up being one of those guys who lives in despair. I just think that's not necessary, and I think that I sell myself short sometimes because I feel like I've been here. I'm in my late 60s. I've done this for a long time. I'm not likely to drink, blah blah blah. But the truth is that I want all there is to have out of this life. I really do. And keep talking. Oh, it's all right. My name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic. This is John, my best friend. That's good because I actually was sorry for everything I just said. I'd like to start over with an entirely different thing. I didn't mean that at all. I was just kidding. No, I've done everything and did it right, and I'm really glad. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. A little sugar, I guess. After you do the step, the sixth and seventh step, and I remember sitting down and writing this list, and I was very ambulatory in my illness. I didn't just harm business associates. In fact, I took property that didn't belong to me from nameless people and corporations, and I was all over the place. And when I think about that, I thought, how do you make amends for something like that? I mean, I saw a clear path for making amends, to my mom and dad, and I owe them money. That would be my first thing. Every time when I would think of amends, before I talk to my sponsor, I think of, I'm sorry for what I did. I want to pay back the money, and I'm all better now. Now that's really what I was, if you'd asked me what I need to do, that's what I'd tell you. And that's not really that's not my understanding today of what that's about. It's a very intimate, and it's that thing. It's the first place in the book where it really says that faith without works is dead. If you don't do this, everything that you have just done is just an exercise at good. It doesn't say that, but it is. It's an exercise at good that leaves you just floating in the water. You feel good for a while, but you don't ever really repair things. I rode from Austin to Midland to make amends to a bank. I had started a business in Midland, and And it turned out that the business was way too time consuming, and I had borrowed some money from a bank to buy some equipment for this business. And then I sold the equipment to buy some other product that I thought was far more profitable. And I was going to pay off the bank and then have a whole lot of money left over, and certainly have a lot more free time. And it was such a good plan that when it was all said and done, I had neither product, money, or the equipment. And so that was this was something that wasn't likely to go away. The bank along with the people on the bank robbery, that bank was wanting to talk to me about how I was going to straighten all this up. In fact, what they wanted me to surrender that equipment, because it was they were going to sell it to get a little of their money back. Well, I was very anxious about that because I couldn't produce it. And I took a ride with, actually it was with a lady that had been sober about 14 years. Her name was Glenda Kuhn. And she wanted to go up to see her sponsor, and she rode with me from Austin to Midland, Texas. And she went up there with me because I needed to make that amends, and I was just too afraid to do it. And all the way up there, she just encouraged me. And I went into that bank and I sat down in front of that banker, and I told him all about my AA experience and what I was trying to do and how I had found God. And he was a church-going guy, and he was a really, really good man. And he was just so excited for me, and just, that's wonderful. And I had agreed then to pay him $200 a week and pay that money back. It was $50,000. Now, I bear in mind that I don't have a job. And I still live in the car that I have not returned yet. But this was all going so well, he was feeling good about it. I was feeling good about it. I left there. I was on cloud nine. I don't think I've felt better in my life, really. Till about 2 weeks later, when I was missing my second $200 payment, and then about the fourth week goes on, and I'm still I don't have $200. I'm not likely to have $200 a month to pay. So finally, I had to contact John Henry, which I just dreaded. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I told him what I had agreed to. He said, why are you doing this? He said, "We agreed to sit down and talk and try to formulate a plan so that you wouldn't get yourself into these things." And I said, I agreed that this would never happen again. And I thought that we should pray. And what do you think? Do you think maybe you ought to call him and explain what we were supposed to say? Well, he didn't seem to think that he needed to get involved on that level. And so I was like, I'm anxious again because it looks like he's going to make me do it. And so the next trip I made up there, John Henry had written out my instructions. And I went in there to see the banker, and I walked in, and I just told him the truth. And I said, I'll pay you whatever I can, or you can take me to jail. But I sold that equipment. I'm going to pay this off. But I said, right now I'm not even employed, but I'm going to be. And he looked at me, and he didn't get up and give me a hug or anything like that. He just looked at his secretary, and he said, every time he comes in and pays us something, write it down, and when it's done, tear it up, and we're done with him. And he said, "You have a good day, sir." And I walked out of there, and I did not feel good. It was a very, very uncomfortable experience, but it was also a very good lesson, because I realized that, telling people what they want to hear, that's not it either. The thing is what am I really going to do? This is about a real spiritual demonstration. This is about an opportunity for me to actually do what I say I'm going to do. And I paid on that thing forever. And then I wished I could tell you that the end of this story was just wonderful and just I did all the right things. But that bank, in 1988, Midland went through a terrible crash. All the banks went under. You remember the S&L loans and all that? Man, banks were just selling right and left. And fortunately for a man with my kind of thinking, it just seemed to be a godsend that bank got sold and then resold. And we're like, well, there's nobody to pay it to. So I discharged that debt in my mind. That remaining $20,000 was not really that big of a deal. I mean, after all, it's probably interest anyway. And I rocked on, and I continued to have financial problems. And I guess it was 8 years later that it just still would pop up in my mind. Anytime I would listen to an inventory, anytime I'd try to help a guy formulate his list, that would come up in my mind, and that's not a good thing to share with him because I don't want him doing that. And I just finally, one day I said to myself, I didn't call a sponsor or anything, I just prayed about it, and I said, I'm going to call that bank that I think bought that paper. In fact, I know it did. And if who answers the phone, I made this very difficult. If whoever answers the phone has any knowledge of this loan, then I'll take that as a sign that I'm supposed to pay it back. I thought I did. That was pretty good. That narrowed it down. And I called, and the lady answered the phone, and I explained my situation, and I told her about the loan and what had happened. And she said, and I didn't tell her my name. I had just told her all of this stuff. And she said, "Why, Danny, I'm very proud of you." I said, "Really?" And it was a lady whose name was Mary Ellen Wells, Herb Wells' wife, and which was one of the guys that 12-stepped me. So I thought, wow, I guess I'm going to have to be out some money here. And so, you know, the fact is that you might as well just get on board with doing this right, because if you're going to stay in here and you're going to keep praying, it's kind of like what he was talking about, you know, inviting God into your pornography, which seems kind of bizarre, but I doubt that you'd even go there if you did that. But I think the same thing happens when you invite God into doing this amends process. When you decide, you know, you're going to pray and you're going to ask God, you know, what's the right thing to do, and give me the strength and power to do it. And then you walk up there and you have to give them something. I did. I had to give them something that really it cost me, you know, and that is a process that I think began to set me free and make me feel a part of everything in life. It really did. I had a lady in Midland, Texas, in Odessa, Texas, she had been one of my many in-laws, and this woman, I just despised her. She was everything about church-going ladies that I couldn't stand. She had her hair all done up like this, and she kept a Bible around, and to me, she always looked down her nose at everybody, and I couldn't stand her. And when I was married to her niece, they'd had a little party over at her house, and she kept silver dollars on the top of her refrigerator. And I was one of the guys, actually I was the main perpetrator, that stole all of them and went partying. And then we kind of ducked the issue, and everybody was asking about it, but, you know, nobody could ever really pin it on me. And I talked to John Henry about it. And he said, you need to go back and see her and make arrangements to pay that money back. I said, I don't like her. He said, that's not paying money back and liking people, or that's not even in the same boat. You know, he said, I don't care if you like her, I want you to pay her money back. So I drove up to Odessa, Texas, and the closer I would get to her house, the angrier I got. And the more I just thought, I remember just what a judgmental, critical, terrible old woman she was. And she didn't need that money. And I got to her, up to her house, and I thought, I'm just going to go get it over with. God, please help me. And I walked up and knocked on the door, and she answered the door, and I just blurted out who I was, and I said, I stole your money. I stole it back when I was married to your niece, and I'm here to pay it back with interest. What do I owe you? And she started crying, and she said, I was in my bedroom praying, because she said, I'm on Social Security, and I got to have some medicine, some heart medicine. I don't have any money left. And she said, you knocked on the door. And I was like, wow, it's just, and I'm going to tell you, I was totally resistant all the way up to knocking on the door. But I gave her money, and it was a win-win deal. She got her money back. She had her prayers answered. I got free of that thing, and I got to see something happen that I didn't believe happened. I didn't believe that these kinds of things really happened. You hear people talk about it, or you read about it in guideposts, but that doesn't happen to you. Somebody's not praying and you walk up and give them their money, but it did. And but it didn't just set me free of the debt, but it changed my whole outlook and my whole perception about God, about spirituality, about what we're doing. And I also have to say that as I saw her crying over there, I didn't see her as a mean old woman. I just saw her as a little old lady that was all alone and needed some help. And so it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. The way I dealt with most of my problems with what I had done in society, I thought that going to prison twice had discharged my debt to society. But neither Harold nor John Henry agreed with that. They felt that I owed slightly more. And so that's one of the things that led me to get involved in corrections work. Because I don't even know who all I took from, because of the way we did. But we took from society at large. So I was led to become involved in corrections work. I also wound up sponsoring some deputy sheriffs, which was interesting. I started going up to the jails. I started having to do things for the community that I ordinarily wouldn't do. And John Henry said for me to continue to look for opportunities where I could do things that would help out the communities that I lived in. And he said, be that helping clean up the trash. I did Meals on Wheels. I helped deliver Meals on Wheels, and I didn't do it because I wanted to go around and give old people food. I did it because I was looking for a place where I could do something other than what I had done before. And I think that also changed my life, because the principle for me then becomes giving rather than getting all the time. Because I was a hoarder, man. I'd take your stuff and then I'd get some more. I wanted yours and I wanted mine too. And to start to give it back began to change me. It began to soften me and began to make me feel like I was a part of. I had a hard time making amends with my sister-in-law, because my sister-in-law, she didn't think highly of me sober. I was in AA and she thought, good, as long as he doesn't come to our house. And she was my favorite brother, the brother I was closest to. She was his wife. And I loved her kids, but she just absolutely she just thought I was lower than whale stuff. And I didn't know how to make amends to her. How do you set this right? Because first off, I didn't think she was right. I felt like she was just, she was critical, that I was being a victim of a delusional woman. And my other brother and my mother agreed. But what John Henry had told me to do, he says, you need to begin to really treat her like a sister-in-law. And when she's rude and she's mean to you, You need to get thicker skin. You just need to accept that you had a part in creating that, and you try to present a new face. And I would show up at family functions, and when I was invited, I would go and I would try to be on my best behavior. I would include her in conversations, and if she made snide remarks, 90% of the time, not always, but 90% of the time, I would just let it go, and I would call John Henry and tell him I want to throttle her. Because I have this big problem in life. I've got thin skin and a big mouth, and it's a terrible and there's a lot of that in here, by the way. And we all want to get together and rah each other and find out we can't take rah back, But as time wore on and I stayed sober, and I would come to family functions and behave myself, and she would see that I would be a good son and a good brother, and I wouldn't ask for things and I wouldn't overextend myself. I conducted myself in my family the way that I believe the book said, the way that you directed. And as time went on, I was probably 19, it was 1991 when I got a call from my dad, and he said that Denise, who was my sister-in-law, had called him and said, Mike, my brother, he's having a real problem with drugs, and he's having a meltdown, and could you please get Danny to come talk to him? And my dad called me and asked me to come, and I flew down there, and I went over to see my brother, and I went in and talked to my brother, and it was really, he was a mess. And I went in to talk to him, and he came out, and he just had a meltdown, and he said, man, I'm just so tired. And he said, I just wish I could go back to riding on your shoulders like I did when I was a kid. And I said, son, my shoulders aren't big enough, but I can take you to a place where you can get help, and you will stand on the shoulders of real men. And I took him to Alcoholics Anonymous, and he stayed for a while and wound up deciding that church worked for him better, and it has. It's worked just fine for him. He does really, really well, and he's a happy man. But his wife had a completely different picture of me from that point forward, because from that point forward, she realized that what we do, we really do. That I didn't just talk about helping people, and I wasn't just a guy who was trying to worm his way back into the family's good graces so he could take them for a ride one more time. And that changed everything. And now we're good friends, and I really enjoy my time with her. I enjoy talking to her and seeing that she sends me pictures of the kids and the grandkids. I love that, because I was alienated from my family for most of my adult life. And to me, the ninth step is just everything. I mean, when I got, I returned that car, by the way. John Henry told me to take it back and ask the guy, you tell him I've got it, what do you want to do? In other words, put myself in his hands. Well, the guy I stole it from was a guy that I had known since 1954. He lived across the street from me in Midland, and he was a guy that used to run with me on the streets some, and he seemed to do somewhat better in life than I did. And but he had always been afraid of me, and I knew it. So I used that and took from him. And when it came time to take it back, I didn't do the way John said. I put a note on the windshield wiper and said, "Here's your car," and I parked it about 2 blocks from his house where he could find it. And then I told John Henry, and he said, "What a putz," John Henry never really was all that touchy-feely with me, but Al got his car back. And he was angry with me, and he should be. And when I was probably 2 years sober when I arranged to meet with him face to face, and I sat down and I talked to him, and And I told him how sorry I was that I had bullied him and had taken from him, and how I wished that things had been different. And if there's any way he could forgive me, I'd appreciate it. If he couldn't, I understood. But I had a lot of respect for him. And he was angry, and he had a few choice words for me, and he walked off. But then over time, his alcoholism continued, and he's going further and further down. And in 1995, he called me, and he said, "I got to have help." And he was in Midland, and I was down in Austin, and I drove up with a friend of mine, and we picked him up and took him to Big Springs, to the VA center, and he got checked in there, and he started this way of life, and I'm, I don't know if I don't know what part I actually play in that, but I can tell you that if I had kept his car and I hadn't tried to make that bridge to him, that perhaps the only person that he actually knew that was in recovery wouldn't have been available to him. I don't know, but this is the way it turned. And this is all completely different from the way I saw life. To me, anything you got away with, that's good. Let's just leave it alone, and maybe in time, everybody will forget about it. I just won't do it anymore. And I like to say that in sobriety, I have had many, many opportunities to have to clean up after myself because of my poor attention to the details and to doing the things that we ought to do. You just get in here and you run amok. I got in business deals with guys in AA, and Bob just flinched, and it doesn't turn out the way you want it to. I was in a business deal with a guy in AA, and we got into a normal guy, and we started a big mechanical company in Midland, Texas, and I was more interested in being an owner and going to AA and chasing women than I was in actually doing my part. And this friend of mine in AA, who was an accountant, and the partner got together, and they forced me out, and I lost a lot of money over the deal. And I was absolutely livid. I felt very self-righteous, and I would lay there at night and just have burn just thinking about how much I hated them. And I tried praying to make it go away. I tried everything I could think of. I did the sick man prayer, but I couldn't get that resentment to leave. But finally, Jim Puckett talked me into getting in the car and going in there and confessing my former ill feeling and just owning up to my part and just telling them, you know what, I brought this on myself. And I walked in my former partner's office, and I could see him tense up when I walked in his office because he didn't want, he didn't do the right thing about everything either. But I walked in there and I looked at him and I said, David, I'm just so sick of carrying around this hatred, and I'm so sick, and I'm so sorry that I didn't stand up and be a good partner and a man when I could have been. You were a good friend, and you gave me an opportunity, and it didn't turn out good for me, and I don't think for you either. And I wish we could just leave friends. And he just took this big, deep, he just let go, a big sigh, and he said, I've missed seeing you and talking to you, and he said, I'd give anything if it hadn't happened. I said, well, it did, and it's behind us, and maybe we can just be friends. Now, I felt so much lighter when I did that, and I resisted it for 3 years. 3 years I carried that around with me. And none of this is the stuff that I like to think. When I want to present myself in Alcoholics Anonymous, this is not the way I like to present myself. I like to present myself as a guy who speaks in AA and I've got this nice house and this great, little wonderful little wife and the greatest dog in the world, and all of that's true. That's the good stuff. But I would like very much to have you believe that I dealt with my past, and I have moved on, and now I'm a much more effective human being. I have done that, but I did it slowly. I've been here for 32 years, and I'm telling you that at 25 years sober, I had to take bankruptcy. And I didn't take bankruptcy, and for a long time I told everybody, and I even believed it myself. The bankruptcy came because of the economy. It's true, there was a slowdown in the economy. The bankruptcy came because I was a big shot, big spender who lived right on the edge. I never saved a dime. I spent everything. I always had a line of credit, and I lived that way. And when the first downturn in the economy came, I had nothing to fall back on, and I ate me alive in a month, in 6 months' time. In 6 months' time, it took everything I had. And I just, I didn't even know what to do. I had to borrow money to take bankruptcy. And I had a guy that I sponsor, who's a lawyer, handle my bankruptcy and take me through this. And I wound up living at 25 years sober. I lost my house. I lost my business. My dad had made 2 of my truck payments. And I'm not even working in my field. I'm sitting in an apartment, and all of a sudden, all the way, another thing that happened in 2005 at that time is that's when they decided that you couldn't rent an apartment if you had a felony record. So I'm being kicked out of my apartment because I'm a felon. And I told him, I said, that's one of the greatest things I've got going for me. I mean, that's why I'm famous in AA, is because I've been in so much trouble, So, it's just one thing after the other, man. And so what I'm doing now is I'm at home. I'm kind of just going to my group, and I'm just, I'm kind of back on the back row. I got some buddies, we talk about what we used to do. We talk about the good old times and all of that stuff, and cluck our tongues about the new guys that are coming in and they're not doing the deal. And then I go out and I speak, and I go to Thailand. I go to different places, and I can be there what I think I ought to be, but it's not sincere. The truth is that I could get up there and I could say all these things, but I wasn't doing it at home. And that was a very bitter pill for me to swallow. In 2006, things began to turn the corner. They began to turn the corner because it got so bad. I was 25 years sober. I was bankrupt. I didn't know what to do. I got an offer to go to Houston, Texas, and take a job. The guy told me, he said, if you'll commit to 5 years, I'll give you 30% of the company, and I'll give you a nice salary. And I went to Houston, Texas with a truck, a TV, a big screen TV. and a lawn chair. And I couldn't rent an apartment because I'm a felon. So my new boss rented an apartment, and I got in an apartment. And I decided that this is certainly an unmanageable life. And I began to rededicate myself to doing the things that I should have done all along. And I started to become more diligent in turning to God in everything that I do. And I got more involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I quit trying to sell everybody on a bill of goods. And I got up, and Bob doesn't, I mean, he does know it, but he said something that I needed so bad at that time. And he said, and it was a little saying, is go to work, stay at work, and work at work. And that is a very, very important principle. And I would get up every morning, and I still do, and I read that, and I would get out of my house, and I would go to work, and I would give 110%. I would give more than I had. And no matter how tired I was at the end of the day, I went to the meetings, and I went to the meetings where they had people that I didn't find all that attractive, and I went there because I knew that I needed them and they needed me. I found a home group, and I got really involved again in corrections work. And my life began to blossom. I met Vicki, and we had a courtship, and we married. And then I found out that marriage was a lot harder than I had hoped for, and I wanted out. Every 3 days, in my mind, I would measure the garage for a U-Haul trailer. I mean, it's just like, oh my God. My folks stayed married for 65 years. Why? I mean, I couldn't imagine this. Everybody thinks Vicky's so sweet. I said, oh no, that's not true. And that's when, yeah, she's sweeter than me. And that's when I got involved with Steve, and we would talk a lot, because we were both looking for a sponsor, and we would talk back and forth. And Steve managed to hang on to Connie, or she has him, for a long time. And he became very good at talking me down out of the tree, because I'm kind of guy, I'll climb a tree to worry about getting down, and you just, little by slow, everything started to fall into place. And one day I got up in my marriage, and I thought, and I knew I meant it. I thought, I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm in a marriage. We're going to go the distance. And when that happened, everything, and I think this does tie into the amends process. I think this does tie into the change that we try to do. Everything changed, and we're rowing together. Now it's a leaking boat, but we're going in the same direction. We got a lot of patching to do yet. I won't say here, since you tape it, some of the things that I'm having to accept and deal with, because they're kind of significant. But I realized something. I thought, it's not so bad anymore. I talked to Steve about it, and when I told him about it, he said, "Oh yeah, that's pretty tough. It's going to be okay." I thought, yeah, for you, it's. The fallout for you will just be you'll have to listen to me whine for hours, and which he thinks is a pretty big fallout. But in AA, I've learned really to say it's good. Say it's good. I don't care what's happening. You might as well say it's good. It's happening that way anyway. And you might as well start to have the attitude that there's something good that's going to come of this if you'll just stay tapped in and keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I'll tell you that I've seen you guys do that over and over and over again. And you probably have guessed that John Henry McDonald is, for me, a hero's hero. And, and everybody has their John Henry, I think. But John was mine. And one of the things that helped me go through what I had to go through is because I remembered that 10 years earlier he had went through something like that. He had come home. And his wife had moved her personal trainer in their house and his stuff out. And he called his sponsor Frank and said, "Frank," he said, "my wife's got a boyfriend." And he heard that long pause where he knew Frank was saying a prayer. And then Frank came back to him and he said, "Well, it's over." And well, that's very insightful. And he said, "It's over." And Frank said, "Well, what am I going to do?" Frank said, "Well, say it's good." And he said, "Well, Frank, she's moving her personal trainer in. That's her boyfriend." He said, "Say it's good." He said, "She's taking my house." He said, "Say it's good." He said, "She wants me to pay alimony." He said, "Ooh." and then he said, "Say it's good." He said, "What's good about it?" Frank said, "It's good. It's not happening to me." I'm just going to tell you this before I say it, because it's nearly 2 o'clock. We have a friend named Shep Grennan that he passed away, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And but he was a great AA. And I was in Austin, Texas, And I had my 8-step list, and I just stuck with it, as you have probably gathered, that pausing when agitated or doubtful, I have no problem with. It's asking for the right thought or action and moving on that I've kind of stumbled on. But I was sitting there, and I was just stewing over what to do next. You know, I got this list. I don't have any money, so I can't go make amends, and I'm not really sorry, so it's your fault, you know. And I sat there for a while, and I was just crazy. And he sat down next to me, and he said, "Baby, I want to tell you a story." And I hated being called baby. Him and Bob White would do that. And he said, "Baby, I want to tell you a story." And he said there was a turtle that was going along, and he was looking for some water, and he had gotten down in this rut to get some water, and he couldn't get out, and now he was stuck. And he was crying out and asking for help. And finally, a rabbit from the forest came over and said, "You know, you're pretty noisy. What can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, I've been in this wagon rut a long time, and I'm really, really thirsty. I'm hungry, and I can't get out, you know, and my legs aren't long enough." And the rabbit tried to help him. He couldn't get out. So he said, "Look, don't crawl any further down this rut, and I'm going to go to the forest and get some friends and come back, and we'll get you out." And when he came back with a raccoon and a beaver, and they headed that way, they saw that turtle, and he was out of the rut, and he was headed for the water. He said, "How'd you get out of there?" He said, "I thought I heard a wagon coming." You know, so that's the thing in AA that happens to us, you know, where I'm always reminded that there's a wagon coming. You know, I'm an alcoholic. There's no such thing as alcoholism. It's an alcoholism. And I'm just as allergic to that first drink. I've seen it in many, many people, and I do not want to ever have to live that way, because I know I'm not afraid of dying drunk. I'm afraid of living drunk, and that's the truth. And but I'm glad to be here with you guys, and if I keep doing this, I probably won't have to have that happen. Thank you.